Hello, good people of Sherwood, and welcome to a special bonus episode of It'll Be Alright in the 1190s. I'm Alex of the Greenwood, and joining me is my usual co-host, Stu de Joslan, and also joining us is returning special guest, Adam of the Greenwood. How are you both?
Good morrow to thee, good sir. Yeah, very good. Looking forward to our first ever bonus episode and a great topic to do it on as well. One that I know that's close to both of your hearts. So yeah, looking forward to getting stuck in.
Yeah, how are you, Adam?
Yeah, I'm very well, thanks. I'm excited to talk about this as well.
This is, I think, your third appearance, isn't it, after the Christmas episode and the cigarettes and alcohol episode? So you're now joint
record appearance holder with Joe. Yes.
Yeah, with Joe. So
does it count if it's a bonus episode, or is that better? Am I better than them?
maybe it's maybe 2.5.
Uh-huh.
2.5. Yeah, I don't know.
It could be a question for Jeff, that actually.
Yeah.
I don't know what the legal, I don't know what the legality of it all is. So yeah, we'll have to check into that.
Yeah, we'll ask him. Before we get into the main topic of the episode, I should say that today's episode does have a sponsor. Like with all our main episodes, the bonus episodes are not exempt. We take the cash wherever we can get it. And today's episode is sponsored by Much's milled wheat and corn products. So if you head down to Much's Nottingham or Worksop branches and quote the code AllRight90s, you can get 3 groats off their entire range of flour and grain products, which should help you out throughout what looks to be a pretty difficult winter ahead, what with all the dreadful levies that we know the authorities are putting on everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So make the most of that offer from the sponsor, Much's Milled Wheat and Corn Products, today's episode sponsor.
Lovely. I mean, I know we had interest from Emlyn's Longbows as well, but we went with the grain supplier. So yeah, do get that in ready for the long winter ahead.
Speaking of grain, are you familiar with the Prince of Thieves cereal?
No.
Oh, hello. We're right into things here.
I will have to. Oh yeah, sorry. I don't know if that's a bit of a spoiler for the episode content.
I think it's become quite clear what the theme of the episode is.
Yeah, I think we're all right.
I was unaware of this, and I heard about it on another podcast, and I've looked it up, and they were sort of joking about how phallic the cereal is. It's supposed to be like arrows, but it definitely is quite phallic. I will send you an image so you can see.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'm going to look it up on ye old Google.
I think they had Ask Jeeves then, didn't they?
That's true. Yeah. Yeah, I can see the slightly problematic cereal shape. I can see why that has caused some issues.
It also looks like they've not had actual rights to. I think it's not an actual official tie-in, is it? To look, they've not used Kevin Costner's image, and it just says Prince of Thieves.
Yeah.
So I think maybe they found a little loophole. Maybe they had some penis-shaped cereal left over from another project, and they thought we could maybe sort of offload this if we do a sort of archery-themed cereal somehow.
Yeah, proper old school cereal box. I like the look of that. But yes, so today's episode is a bonus episode. It's not part of the It'll Be Alright in the 90s canon as such. But it follows on from our Films of 1991 episode, which we did last week. And during the episode, I talked at length about Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves and how much I love that film. But we also touched upon another Robin Hood film that came out in the same year, a British production, that seemed to sink without trace, I guess, because Prince of Thieves came out in the same year. Mm-hmm. And it turns out neither me nor Stu had ever watched it before. So we thought, let's both watch it, do a little bonus episode, discuss what we thought of it, and also, Stu, you've never seen Prince of Thieves, have you? So,
I haven't,
but you have
now.
No,
I have now seen it. I can confirm. Yes.
So we'll also all discuss how we think they compare as the two rival Robin Hood films of the year. So let's just get straight into it then. What did everyone think of the British Robin Hood film from 1991?
Yes, I tracked this down and watched it for the first time the other day, and I think you and I had the same idea when the very first caption flashed up, which is that the papyrus font is never a signifier for anything that's that's good. and this is used liberally in the opening titles for this movie. I joke, this isn't a bad film at all. Uma Thurman in an early role, playing Maid Marian, of course.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that struck me in the opening was that it's a very small incident that leads to a very large event happening. So this guy, a guy is caught hunting on Sir Robert Hoad, as he is known at the beginning of the film, on Sir Robert Hoad's land. Sir Robert Hoad decides to let him off instead of having him punished, and for this he gets outlawed, and it sort of escalates very quickly, and he becomes an outlaw. So it just seemed to be a very small thing that kicked it all off and got the film going, if you like. And yeah, that was my impression of the opening. I do have a few notes about things that happened at other points in the film. But what was your opinion of sort of the first 20 minutes, half an hour?
Well, like Stu said, one of the things I quite liked about it was the inciting incident that sort of leads to Robin Hood being outlawed. Him sort of stepping in to save a poacher's life. It's sort of that's the start of it, but then it sort of escalates because Robin reveals a secret of, I can't remember the main character's name. He's not someone who is in any of the other Robin Hood stories, as far as I'm aware. But
yeah, so it's not the Sheriff of Nottingham and it's not Guy of Gisborne, is it? Those two aren't in it. They're replaced by other characters.
Yeah. He's the guy. He has like a bowl cut in it. That's probably the best way that I can think to sort of signify who that is. But him and Robin are friends, and when Robin betrays this secret of his by sort of saying in public, "Your great grandfather was a pirate," that's the thing that drives the wedge between them. And so the film is sort of more about their relationship than Robin and Marian's relationship in a way. Like there's more sort of like a bromance where they sort of fall out at the beginning and then sort of come back together towards the end. Spoiler alert.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, it is kind of about their relationship, isn't it? So the character who's kind of in the place of the Sheriff of Nottingham, I suppose, it is Baron Roger de Guerre. And then I suppose the Guy of Gisborne character is Sir Miles Falconet, I think.
Yeah.
And they are so Sir Miles Falconet is a Norman basically, and that's a real theme in this film, isn't it? It's very pro-Saxon, anti-Norman. Mm-hmm. And then I guess the guy you're talking about who was friends with Robin Hood, I guess he's a Saxon, although he's got a kind of French name. But
I think he's a Norman because there's a bit towards the end where there's like a fight between him and Will Scarlet, and they're sort of saying like we both want England to be great. De Guillaume, whatever his name was, said, "I will make England great despite the English," and Will Scarlet says like we should work together, and I think it's all about like unifying the Saxons and the Normans, but the real baddie in it is the very French Norman guy, the sort of the Guy of Gisborne sort of type character,
who is a German actor doing a terrible French accent.
It was a very, very French in inverted commas accent, wasn't it?
Indeed. And just touching on Will Scarlet there, I wasn't really paying attention during the opening credits, and I was completely under the impression that Will Scarlet was portrayed by Michael Ball in this movie. It was only when the end credits came up that I realised it wasn't, and I was very surprised to learn that it wasn't. This actor looks very, very similar to Michael Ball. I thought, there we go. There's old Michael, but alas, it wasn't.
It's actually Owen Teale from Game of Thrones. He was also in Line of Duty. If you look him up, you'll recognise it. But he's Will Scarlet. Yeah, one of the more recognisable actors in the film.
Somebody else I thought I recognised, but I couldn't find any evidence on IMDb or any of the usual websites to support this, is that in the scene when the children are on the gallows, I thought the older child looked very much like the lad from Burner's Watch. I thought it very, very much looked like him, but then I thought, well, 1991 he probably would have been too young, because it looks like Bernard does in the series, which was made later in the 90s. So I don't think it was him, but it just made me startle and think, oh, that's Bernard. But I don't think it was. If anybody has any evidence to the contrary, then please let me know. But
I never actually watched Bernard's Watch as a child, or ever, in fact, and I was under the impression that it was a cartoon. So that's interesting to find out it's not a cartoon.
I never watched either, which I guess makes sense. I kind of thought it was a cartoon as well. I wonder if we're getting it mixed up with Williams' Wish Wellingtons. Is that another kids program where the character gets sort of wishes due to an inanimate object that they possession?
I've never heard of that one either. That sounds like you've just made that up.
Oh no! Williams' Wish Wellingtons definitely exists, but no, they are two, and it is a cartoon, but they are decidedly different programs.
I think what I was thinking of was Penny Crayon.
Oh yeah.
Oh yes.
Which was a cartoon, and she could draw stuff, which then came to life. I think.
Yeah.
Which is not the same as a watch that can stop time, but still a good power to have in the CBeebies cinematic universe.
So out of the three, then, are we saying if we could have a watch that could stop time, Wellingtons that could grant any wish, or you could draw something and it would come true? Which one are we saying is the most useful?
It's got to be the wellies, surely.
Yeah.
If you're no good at drawing, you're sort of limited by what you can potentially draw. So
that's true. Yeah.
You could sort of conjure, if you try to draw a person, you could sort of conjure up some sort of awful mutant sort of being into existence that would presumably just wish to be killed straight away.
Yeah, the Penny Crayon scenario relies on you living in a cartoon world yourself. Yeah. Because you'll never be able to draw anything that looked lifelike enough, unless you were a brilliant artist. So you'd sort of you try and draw yourself loads of money, but it would never be taken or accepted at the bank, would it? They'd be like, this is clearly counterfeit because it looks like it's been written and drawn on a piece of A4 with a biro, which it would have been.
You could live in a big house, but it would be a big square house with 4 square windows on the front and a door and a squiggle of smoke coming out of a chimney.
I was going to say a little curl of smoke coming out of the chimney. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, I'm glad we've solved that.
In terms of the film, and I thought it was, I did enjoy it. I thought it was, I think the one thing I really liked about it was the setting and the filming style. It was clearly filmed in winter, which I thought was quite a surprising choice for a film set in Sherwood Forest, because there's no leaves on any of the trees. There's no sort of foliage or cover. It doesn't look like a particularly nice place. And there's a scene where they fight over the river and Robin falls in the river, and it just looks freezing cold. Actually, there's a couple of scenes where people go in the river, and it looked like it must have been quite hard to film. But I kind of liked that setting. It made it seem a bit more gritty.
It was definitely more earthy. I would have said was the word I would have used to compare it to Prince of Thieves.
Yeah, there was a thing which I didn't pick up on at the time, but when I read about it later, sort of thought, oh yeah, that makes sense, and then spotted it on the re-watch, is that the only time that the sun comes out is, again, spoiler alert, when Robin and Marion get married at the end. It's like the unifying of the Norman and Saxon warring factions.
Yeah, I saw that on the IMDb trivia page. I thought it was a bit harsh that comment only got 1 out of 9 interest points, as it were.
I didn't even pick up on that. I know we like to see if there's a good bit of trivia whether other people have responded or not, but
but I think it probably is intentional, isn't it? I think.
Oh yeah, definitely, because there's a whole thing where one of the characters who's painted as like the Green Man looks to the sky, and there's a big prolonged shot of him sort of smiling as the sun comes out, and then a shot of sunlight coming through the trees. It's definitely a conscious decision, I would have said.
Yeah, I thought the story was pretty good. There's some similarities, or there's some really striking similarities with Prince of Thieves, aren't there? So I guess we can start talking about Prince of Thieves a bit as well. But the element with the church in the background being kind of run by sort of greedy, not very reputable people, I thought was the same as Prince of Thieves. The scene that you just mentioned with the hanging of the peasants having to be rescued by Robin Hood was almost straight out of Prince of Thieves. Obviously there's no witch, but Yeah, there were just what other bits that I have written down here, or the wedding at the end.
Yeah,
I guess.
marriage at the end. Which out of the two films, I would say the marriage at the end of the non-Costner Robin Hood was like vastly superior. I think the wedding scene in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves almost spoils the rest of the film for me.
Do you mean because it looks too nice, or because it's too cheesy?
It's too cheesy, and it's the wink to the camera, or the bit where Friar breaks the fourth wall.
Oh yeah.
It completely, I don't know, it sort of ruins the rest of the film for me.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think another similarity actually that I've got written here is that one of the merry men portrays Robin by going to Nottingham Castle, and that was really similar to the Christian Slater character, or what he's Will Scarlet in that he portrays him, doesn't it? So I'm not an expert on the Robin Hood sort of through the centuries, because it's obviously a really old story. So some of these things might just be part of some of those really old stories and legends. I don't know, but definite similarities here.
It was quite a shocking moment, I thought, when they find Harry, who's the character who's gone to betray Robin, and they find him sort of in the cage with the maggots in his eyes, and that was not really in keeping with the rest of the film. I thought it was quite a shocking moment.
Yeah,
there was nothing really like that happens in the rest of the movie, so I found that quite jarring.
One of my other criticisms of the film was that it is quite bloodless. Like, I know there is like, so you see people shot by arrows and stuff, but there's the big fight towards the end. There's clearly there's clear shots where people hit someone with a sword quite gently, and they pretend that they've been stabbed, but you see there's no like actual. It's just like being hit with a fake sword, and they sort of clutch their chest and go down. And you sort of think that's the sort of thing that would be fine in the background, but you can't have that as the main action in the shot and get away with it. Definitely not these days. You need to see some sort of blood. They didn't even go to the effort of making it go under his arm like you would do on a stage production. It was just whack them on the chest and they fell down.
Yeah. That gibbet or gibbet scene with Harry's body in it, like you say, Stu, I totally agree, was really quite shocking. But it did also really remind me of Prince of Thieves, the moment when you see Robin's dad, Baron Blessed, hanging from a gibbet outside his castle in Prince of Thieves, which when I watched it at the cinema, which I've mentioned this at least twice on the pod, I had to recoil from. Mm-hmm. So it's really just strange that those two moments are really similar, of having someone in a gibbet, being quite gory. So I thought that was kind of weird. I was just going to say there was one other bit of violence which I thought was kind of slightly odd, which is when Friar Tuck breaks someone's neck, but he does it in quite a sassy way.
Yes. That's why I made a little note that he does like the finger clicking from side to side, and I wasn't aware of that being a thing until obviously like white people started doing it, ironically, in like the 2000s or whatever. Maybe it was like a sassy thing that was just generally in the culture previous to that, but it was very much like tonally odd, wasn't it? That moment. The whole thing was just generally bizarre. Like to break someone's neck like that in this film, and then that to be the way that the sort of the one-liner sort of sign off. Yeah, the whole thing was very bizarre.
I'd also just like to say I think it took Robin far too long to realise that Robert Proud was in fact Maid Marian.
Yeah,
I think I'd have probably realised in about 5 seconds, but it takes him like weeks in the film.
It's so bizarre, isn't it? That bit, because he, especially the bit that I think makes that. I mean, firstly, this film was made in '91, and I think Blackadder was already making fun of that idea of like a woman dressing up as a young boy in order to like live a double life, like sort of 5 or so years previous to this. So to be making that like a major part of your plot in '91 feels like a bit of a mistake. But the bit where it's most ridiculous is when he takes this boy off to meet Maid Marian, who someone has sort of trapped him by setting up a meeting with Maid Marian, and he takes the real Maid Marian in disguise as this guy, and he's telling her the story of himself falling in love with Maid Marian and how incredibly beautiful she is, and he's sort of telling her the story face to face. And no point does he ever say, actually, now that I mention it, you look quite a lot like this woman who I'm sort of waxing lyrical about. She's so unbelievably beautiful, yet I've somehow completely forgotten what she looks like enough that I could not recognise her right now that you've dyed your hair black.
Yeah, it is a bit laughable, that bit. But I mean, that brings us on to the casting, I guess, and specifically Uma Thurman as Maid Marian. I really like her in that role. I really liked. That's one of my favourite bits of the whole film, I think, was her in that role. I thought she was good. I thought the character was good. She was kind of stood up for herself quite a lot. You know, she even gets involved with some fighting towards the end. But I really liked the way she did the character. What about you two?
The fighting at the end, as another bit of an issue I had with the film, was this is after as Robin Hood and the Outlaws are sort of interrupting the marriage, isn't it? The marriage ceremony. So they sort of break in, and Robin is fighting the German Frenchman, and Maid Marian is sort of staying to one side and sort of doing the sort of look out Robin sort of thing. But then there's a point where some guards break in and they go to attack Maid Marian, and there's no real reason for them to do that. Like, they sort of rush her with spears and stuff, and she fights them off. But why are they attacking her? There's sort of no real logical reason for that.
Yeah,
she's one of two of the three people in the room who should be there. She's the bride at the wedding.
I think they're just panicking. They're hotheads, aren't they?
Maybe it's an intrinsic hatred of women that they just kicks in. That there's a chance they see a woman, they've got some spears.
Yeah, an implication that the Normans are misogynists and sort of brutes all around, maybe.
I thought there were a lot of similarities as well with the wedding to the wedding of Mr. Burns and Marge's mum. When Grandpa interrupts it from the top balcony. I just got Mrs. Bouvier written down on the pad.
Okay, so Stu, should we move on to Prince of Thieves for you, Stu? I don't need to say anything about that film, but what did you think of it, having watched it for the first time?
Well, lads, I don't want you to fall out with me. I really don't want you both to fall out with me, because I treasure both of your friendships. But I have to say, it didn't do an awful lot for me. I know you both really. I can see your face, Alex. I know you both really appreciate this movie, and I think that this might be down to two things before I go any further. Is that, first of all, I think maybe I have not been served well by watching this for the first time 30 years after it was made. I think maybe if I'd been able to watch it and appreciate it in 1991 or earlier than I have done, I might, appreciate it like you guys do, because you watched it in your childhood. The other thing is that we watched it on an extremely hot night, and we started it very late at night. So maybe I wasn't in the right viewing conditions for it either. So there is that. A couple of things I've noted are actually noted by many people, it turns out, when I've been doing some more research. So the fact that when Robin and Azim arrive in England at Dover,
you're going to say the geography thing, aren't you?
They visit Nottingham via Hadrian's Wall.
Yeah, I knew it.
But that's been covered many times, so I don't want to go into that. I was waiting for him to attempt an English accent at some point, which he never did. But there are plenty of moments I enjoyed. I enjoy John Little's first line just being bollocks, shouted really loudly across the valley. Really enjoyed Sean Connery's cameo at the end, which Beth had kept a secret from me. She's seen it before. She knew it was coming up. I didn't really like Sean Connery, so I'm glad that he turns up. The standout character for me was the Sheriff of Nottingham. I thought it was a better character than Robin Hood. I thought it was better acted than Robin Hood. Have I angered you enough yet to step in? Or I
think these are quite valid points, some of these.
Yeah, I think with so many films like this, it's completely different, I think, if you see it as an adult for the first time. So I wouldn't really expect any adult seeing it for the first time to think it was anywhere near as good as I or Adam to, because it's just the nature of these sort of films, isn't it? So, yeah, it's hard to argue with those things, particularly.
I don't want you to get me wrong. I don't by any stretch of the imagination think that it's a bad movie. I would never say that about Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. Like I say, it didn't really do a lot for me to. I don't know, to sort of back up what I'd heard about it being one of the greats of the 90s. But it's just that's just a personal thing, and I'm not about to. It's not a hill I'm about to die on, so don't worry. There was another thing, which was even though they're all in Nottingham, and presumably most of the people who are in the forest when Robin gets there would have lived their entire lives in Nottingham or the Midlands. Why have they all got West Country accents? It's just because that they're simple folk, and simple folk must have West Country accents to denote the fact that they're simple. I'm offended.
It feels like the hill to die on, doesn't it? Almost.
That's the hill to die on. You're quite right. That's the hill to die on. I was quite offended by that. But again, this is not the first movie that's done that, and it won't be the last. But as a proud West Countryman with a West Country accent, I was a bit hurt by that.
I mean, to be fair, you do live in the trees, though, Stu. So you can't really say that there's anything wrong with that. And maybe it's just a Wessex accent, and that's what it was like in those days. And it's only in, sorry, not a Wessex accent, a Saxon accent.
Mm-hmm.
And it's survived in Wessex and also East Anglia, bizarrely, and nowhere else. But yeah, valid point. But so, how do you think it compares to the British Robin Hood, the other film?
Well, they're quite different stories, as we've established. So, in a way, it's a little bit difficult to compare them directly. I think in terms of action and fun, I think you have to look at Prince of Thieves. I think Alan Rickman as a sheriff of Nottingham is a better villain than the German Frenchman. There can be no doubt about that. And one other thing, we touched on this briefly in the films of '91 last week, but we were weighing up the Sheriff of Nottingham against Hans Gruber. Mm-hmm. For me, I still think Hans Gruber is the greater villain, the cinematic villain. Now, having appreciated, because the Sheriff of Nottingham is obviously it is a bit of a pantomime thing.
Yeah.
And again, maybe as I was just saying about the movies, because they're so different, they can't really be directly compared. Because the Sheriff of Nottingham is a great pantomime movie villain, but Hans Gruber is a great ultra realistic terrorist villain. So really, they can't be directly compared. But in terms of performance, I think I prefer Hans Gruber. But yeah, no, I did prefer the Prince of Thieves in terms of fun and action. The fight scenes were a bit more realistic. We've obviously already discussed the fact that there was a lot of bloodless battling in the first movie. But in terms of actually comparing them directly, I'm not sure that it can really be sort of done very effectively. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah, I'm not sure really. I think because I rewatched the Patrick Bergin one, the British made one, mm-hmm. first, and as I was watching that, I was thinking, oh yeah, this is like pretty good, really. Like despite like what I complained about the dodgy action towards the end, I thought like this is holding my attention. It's sort of like there's enough going on that I'm into this. But then I put Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves on, and immediately it feels like a big film. There's like a lot of action happening. There's sort of set pieces, and it feels like a big production. Whereas, yeah, the other one is more like you can see why the other one went basically straight to TV, I think, or straight to video.
Oh, yeah, I think that is the main difference, isn't it? Is the sort of production values and the direction. And there's just certain things about the way it's directed. You can tell it's not done by a Hollywood bigwig, because Prince of Thieves is directed by Kevin Reynolds, who did some other fairly big Hollywood films. I know he played a big part in Dances with Wolves with Kevin Costner. He also directed Waterworld, which, whatever you think about it, is a big Hollywood film. And a couple of other films I really like as well, actually. There's a film called The Beast of War, which I really like, which no one else seems to have seen. But so I quite like this director. But the British version is directed by someone called John Irvin, and I don't really recognise anything else he's directed. So he's obviously not such a big name. But there's elements of the story as well that are kind of less polished, like when they rescue the people from the hanging. It's sort of the plot of that, or the plan. Also, with the interruption in the wedding, it's all just very quick. You know, they make the plan and then suddenly they're there. They're in the crowd. Whereas in Prince of Thieves, when they're rescuing the people from hanging, it's a lot of build up to it. You know, it builds the tension, which is just, I guess, more professional when it comes to direction and editing and writing. So that was a big thing.
That links in quite well to the next thing I was going to mention briefly, which is that, Adam, you said that the British Robin Hood sort of held your attention, and there was, you know, there were things going on to keep you involved. Now that movie is about an hour and 45 minutes, which I felt was the perfect length for it. At 2.5 hours, Prince of Thieves did feel a bit long to me, and again, it could be that it could be the circumstances in which I was watching it, but it felt long to me. It did. I did find myself checking the time at points, whereas I didn't really with the first film. And I am not saying many things that are endearing myself to you guys this evening. I realise that, but I'm here to provide balance.
Were you watching the extended version? Because I know there's an extended cut which has an extra 15 minutes. I might be wrong.
Yeah, there's
a lot.
Yeah, there's definitely an extended version with quite a lot more, which I've only watched once. The last time I watched it relatively recently, I watched that version for the first time. There is a fair bit added.
Right, that might explain it then.
So, Stu, in the version you watched, was there quite a long bit with the witch and the Sheriff of Nottingham where they were sort of, or were they sort of making potions or something? They were in her room in the castle quite a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
Because in the normal cut, there's very little of that. So I think.
Right. Okay, that explains it then. I would like to withdraw that comment.
I mean, it's fair enough. I've watched it so many times, and it's such a big film for me. But I would have had no idea how long it was. I guess it's just one of those films where I know it so well that time just has no meaning when I'm watching it, because I had no idea that it was that long.
David's watch of a film, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly.
Apparently, there could have potentially been an even longer cut of it originally. I read that Kevin Costner he basically hijacked the editing process of the film and was unhappy that, or he was aware of and unhappy about Alan Rickman sort of stealing the show basically, and so he had a lot of his scenes cut from the film. So potentially there could have been a much longer, much more Sheriff of Nottingham heavy film, which I would have really liked to have seen.
But apparently, a bit of trivia as well, that there's originally the sheriff and the witch were supposed to be revealed to be mother and son, but that was removed. That was originally written in, and the director was annoyed by that being edited out. So I think the extended version alludes to that a bit more, but it's still not revealed.
Yeah, there's a sort of Exorcist style swapping. Oh, not Exorcist, sorry, The Omen. You know, in The Omen, like the swapping of one child for another child.
Yeah.
I think that's how the Sheriff of Nottingham ends up in the position that he is. Apparently, he's sort of swapped by his mother for another child who is going to be sort of a nobleman or of some kind.
Yeah, I think in terms of another thing to compare them with, I think the only thing in the British version that I prefer is probably that feeling of that sort of wintry setting and that earthiness and that roughness around the edges. I do like that. It's almost a bit like a British folk horror film sort of setting, which I really like. One of my favourite sort of settings for a film. So I definitely like that. Not that I didn't also really like the Prince of Thieves woodland. I thought that was really, really cool. But yeah, what about you, Adam? How would you compare the two?
In terms of the setting, do you mean?
No, just generally. Like I know which one you prefer, but.
Oh yeah, I definitely prefer Prince of Thieves, but there were bits of the other film that I did like more, like the wedding at the end felt like if they'd taken that approach to the Prince of Thieves one, it would have been preferable.
I think I left my decision hanging because I said that it was.
Oh yeah, you
I
did.
felt like it was quite difficult to compare the two movies due to the various differences. But I do think that if I had to come out in favour of one, despite everything I've said, I think I would have to come out in favour of Prince of Thieves, just for the Alan Rickman performance and the better action sequences, etc., and the appearance, of course, of Sean at the end. I would have to come out in favour of Prince of Thieves. So it is a majority verdict there, and I hope that goes some way to making up for the scandalous comments I've made this evening.
Yeah. Okay. I'll let you off. I forgive you. Also, we haven't even mentioned the Bryan Adams theme song, which sort of is better than the whole of the British film as put together. So
it's about as long as the British film.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean the soundtrack to the British one was fine, but it didn't have anything quite like that. Right. Well, we've been talking about this for longer than we were expecting, which isn't actually that surprising. But instead of doing the usual "What's the most '90s" feature we do with our canon episodes, we decided to do a who is the best, or who would be the perfect '90s casting for Robin Hood. That's like the bonus feature today. So, what were you both thinking about that? Who would you think would make the perfect Robin Hood from the '90s?
Well, I thought about something which I've seen once, which is one more time than a lot of things that we discuss on this podcast. And I saw it at the Millennium Dome in 1999, I think, and it was Blackadder Back and Forth, which was the specially produced episode of Blackadder to be screened in the Millennium Dome. And in it, he builds a time machine and goes throughout, to various points in time, and he meets at one point Robin Hood, played by Rick Mayall, which is like a 2 or 3 minute sort of skit in a much larger thing. But I would have loved to have seen a full series or movie with Rick Mayall as Robin Hood, or maybe even a Blackadder, surrounding based in that time would have been great. But I think Rick Mayall for me. I also asked this question to Beth, who came up with a far better answer, as she normally does for these things. She would like to see a Muppets version of Robin Hood, with, of course, Kermit the Frog playing the lead role. So that's from the Joslin household. It's either Rick Mayall or Kermit the Frog for us.
That's a great answer, Kermit the Frog.
Great choices.
What about you, Adam? Can you better that?
I definitely can't better that. Mine were more sort of straight down the line sort of answers. Because I had a sort of quick think about. I tried to do it with actors who would have been an appropriate-ish age in the 90s to play that character, and I did struggle a little bit. But then I landed on Christian Bale, who would have been, I think, 25 by 1999. So maybe a bit young, but still like old enough potentially to play that character. And I thought he would have the right presence to inspire the merry men, and also like do all the actiony stuff. He maybe wouldn't be so good at any of the sort of levity or anything in it, but that's someone who I thought would have been a good choice for someone who would rob from the rich and give to the poor, and inspire folktales and stuff. But after thinking about that, I did think, although it would have not potentially been an excellent performance, I would have really liked to have seen a Keanu Reeves Robin Hood. I feel like that if we were going to allow Kevin Costner to just do an American accent, why not let Keanu Reeves do his sort of not very good English accent? But I think he would have been a really good sort of heartthrob. Yeah, Robin Hood.
So I think we should wrap it up there, because we're bordering on a normal episode in length here, which is not our
the intention.
Yeah, not our intention at all. But if you've got any thoughts on either of these films, if you have seen Robin Hood, the British one, recently, we'd definitely like to hear from you, because I don't know anyone else who's ever seen this. So please do get in contact about that. But also, if you're a Prince of Thieves fan, or you want to talk about any of the series that were on over the years, or any other films that we don't know about, get in touch in the usual ways. On Twitter at allright90s, email allright90s@gmail.com, facebook.com/allright90s, and then on Instagram we are allright.90s.podcast. And yeah, have either of you got any closing comments on Robin Hood?
There's something that I sort of thought through watching both of them in bits today is how often the characters sort of plunge into water. And I sort of think now, as someone who was able to get into like a house with central heating and with sort of like dry, fluffy towels and stuff, I'm reluctant to get into cold water. So I can't imagine how anyone would ever really willingly go into a cold river in, like, what was it, 12th century?
Yeah.
When you're going to be stuck in those clothes potentially for the rest until you die.
I also felt like that when they're in the British one, when they fall in the water and it's the middle of winter. I guess that's what happens when you grow up. You watch these films and you think about the practicalities. You're no longer just enjoying it for the moment. You're thinking, well, Hadrian's Wall is north of Nottingham, so that doesn't make sense. Or you're thinking, it's too cold to go in the river. This is why you've got to watch these things when you're a kid.
When Kevin Costner's Robin Hood jumps from the boat as it's being rowed to shore in Dover and sort of wades through the water because he's so excited to be home, I'm thinking, you're going to have to walk all the way to Hadrian's Wall in those wet boots now.
True.
Oh yeah, and then he like sort of eats some of the shoreline, doesn't he, as well, which is a little over the top.
Are you saying you don't do that, Stu, when you get off the plane at Gatwick? Are you saying you don't get down on your hands and knees and lick the tarmac?
I do it when I come home from work. I just pick some grass out of the front garden and have a little nibble. It's great to be back here in Pewsham.
Right, well, I think that should be about it, really, because I don't want to hear Stu criticise the greatest film ever made anymore. Too painful. So I think that's it. So thanks, Adam, for coming on and giving us your expert thoughts on a film that I know means a lot to you, and also the British version. It's been good to have you on.
No problem.
Yeah, thanks,
I've
Adam.
talked about this probably for the same length of time again. Probably for the entire running time of the extended cut of Prince of Thieves, I could talk about that film.
Yeah, me too. I could talk for another hour, but
well, I can leave you guys now, and then you can do an extended cut if that's what you would like.
Yeah, it could be like the lost cut from Prince of Thieves, where there's more content from the Greenwood brothers.
In the editing, when you come to edit this podcast, I'll sort of lock you both out of the studio and cut out all of Stu's best bits.
Brilliant.
Right. Okay. Well, we will see you all next time when I believe we're doing an episode on one-hit wonders of the 90s.
We are.
But until then, it's farewell from me.
And it's fare thee well from me, good people.
Cancel the kitchen scraps for lepers and orphans. No more merciful beheadings. And call off Christmas.